putting that to sleep. I just started. Okay, that's not too bad. It's the readings from, well, Tom, you were listening. You don't even have to look at the screen. It's the readings this morning that Gerard gave to us. And in Isaiah, and Isaiah is one of my favorites. Isaiah says this, and the first part of it is what's really important. If you have trouble seeing the screen, I'll read it for you. Thus says the Lord, all you who are thirsty, come to the water. You who have no money, come, receive grain and eat. Come without paying and without cost. Drink wine and milk. Why spend your money for what is not bread? Your wages for what fails to satisfy. Feed me, and you shall eat well. You shall delight in rich fare. Come to me heedfully, listen, that you may have life. And then in the second reading, which is, of course, from the New Testament, the believers form the community. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper and to prayer. All the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And why those two readings? Well, Isaiah, of course, is talking about the future when there will be a new way of life, a new lifestyle, a new system. And of course, in the Acts of the Apostles, that's the recounting of the early days of Christ's church. And if you hear the two words, it connects. Isaiah is saying, this is what's going to happen. And in the Acts of the Apostles, this is what is happening. And why is that important for us? Well, it's important because the prophecy of Isaiah comes true. And it happens with the early Christians. And when I looked at that, I thought very much of our community. How, when we began, we were searching for an identity. Who were we to be? What was going to be our identity? And if you think of the apostles right after, Jermaine has told us on a couple of occasions, they ran away. They were a bunch of scary cats. Right? And so when they started getting to back, what are we going to do? What are we going to be like? And gradually what emerges out of that is a system of life, a way of life, where everyone is cared for. That is special, that's unique. I read an article about 4 months ago, and it said, the title was, Jesus was a socialist. And I thought, wow, this is pretty neat. So I read the article. And I think what makes the article kind of interesting, not to slander any particular group or anything, but this article was printed in a magazine produced by the Knights of Columbus. Now, there was never any reference to that made afterwards. I suspect the guy who wrote it probably got fired. Because following issues have come out very strongly in support of Rick Santorum and so on, but that's a whole other issue. This reading is often used to point to that particular aspect. But it's not a political statement as such. Jesus isn't saying, go out there and vote for the Marxists. It's not that at all. What it is, it's a way of life for people. And when Isaiah says, why would you spend your money on other frivolous items? Why don't you just spend your money on what's needed? And what's needed? Food for people. What's needed? Clothing for people. What's needed? Water to drink for people. What's needed? Shelter for people. And how do you provide that? Well, people provide that. And you do that because it's the right thing to do. Jesus looked at what was around, and he saw poverty. He saw injustice. He saw starvation. He saw people dying of thirst. He saw children running around naked. And he saw families struggling, barely making ends meet. And so he says, listen, you know what? I'm going to bring you a totally new life. And in order to do that, Jesus says, I am going to live as one of you. I'm going to be human. And we see that. We saw that on Friday, right? When we did the stations from the point of view of Jesus' mother, how he suffered. And his death on the cross, totally humiliating. And the Romans humiliated people purposely. It was to teach others, if you cross the line, this is what happens to you. And people saw that. And they didn't want that to happen. God forbid that happens to me, they would say. Thus, Jesus goes through all of that to say to us, I am one of you. And why else then do we follow? Well, in fulfillment of the Scriptures, the Son of God ultimately conquers death. The resurrection. That's why, when I was a little one, like the kids are at the back, I remember here, Easter is the greatest celebration in the church. Easter, are you kidding me? Christmas, everyone knows it's Christmas. It's not Easter, actually you get some candy and stuff for Easter, but Christmas you get gifts. And so as you get a little more mature, it took me a little longer, but as you get a little more mature, you realize that, hey, you know what, I think I get it. I think I understand now why Easter is so important to all of us. Because Jesus conquers all. It's a reaffirmation of what he is all about. And so those coming after him, who were so impressed by the Son of God living life as one of them, they said, we want to follow Jesus. How do we do this? Well, we know how not to do it. He railed against the hierarchies. He railed against the gap between the rich and the poor. And then he says, from Isaiah and by example, everyone is to have something to eat. Everyone. Everyone is to have something to drink. Everyone. Everyone is to have a place to live. Everyone. So when Jesus leaves, he leaves behind for all of us this master plan. And we know that. We've experienced helping the poor in so many ways. I'm not going to even bother recounting them. Now we've seen when we help people do that, what it does for them, and what it does, even more importantly, really, I think, for us. In your hearts, how do you feel when you really help someone? There's nothing you can buy that gives you that feeling, is there? The feeling that you have helped somebody. There's nothing you can buy. You can't go to a store and say, feeling good for helping somebody, toy. I'm going to buy 5 of them. It doesn't work that way. It only happens when you follow the blueprint. And that's the beauty of this. And it's not rocket science. And I'm not a good scientist anyways, and even I can figure it out. So the plan is right there. It's right there for all of us. Finally, I'll end with a little bit of a ironic humor in a way. I was just reading this, and it was a little quip. You gotta pay attention to it. And if you don't get it, laugh anyways, okay? At least make me feel good. Somebody said, you know, why hasn't God come back to Earth? Well, the reason being that God's busy visiting the 2 million other planets out there that didn't crucify his son.